Hello everyone. Let us begin the new topic, that is the legal aspects of environmental protections. Here we are going to talk how we can protect the environment using different acts, rules or regulations, or we can say what are the different legal provisions for the protection of environment. So let us see legal aspects means what? Legal aspects of environmental protections refer to the laws, acts, rules, and regulations made by the government to prevent environmental pollutions, protect natural resources, and ensure sustainable development. These laws create a legal framework to hold individuals, industries, and government bodies accountable for activities that harm the environment. So, what are the objectives of the environmental laws? The first objective we can see to control pollution, air, water, noise, soil, etc., to conserve forest and wildlife, to ensure sustainable use of natural resources, to punish offenders who harm the environment, who damage the environment, to create awareness and responsibility among citizens and industries. So let us begin uh, about the legal aspects. What are the various provisions of the uh, environmental protections given in our constitution? So constitutional provision in India provides a strong legal foundation for environmental protection. We can see in Constitution of India, Article 48A says that the state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. Article 51 AG, it is the duty of every citizen to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Article 21 of the Constitution of India, that is right to life. In this article, the Supreme Court has interpreted the right to life to include the right to a clean and healthy environment. So, based on this different article mentioned in the Constitution of India, we are going to talk about the some of the important acts which have been passed by the Government of India for the protection of environment. So the first act we can see, the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. This act provides for the protection of wild animals, birds and plants. It also provides for setting of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries and biosphere reserves. Prohibits hunting and trade in endangered species, provides legal powers to officers and punishment to offenders. So this is the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, which is also a part of environmental protections. The next act we can see, the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. What are the salient features and provision of this act? This act provides the constitution of central and state boards. Under this act, the state and central state pollution control boards have been constituted for the prevention and control of water pollution. The act discusses power and function to the boards to control pollution. As per this act, no person shall knowingly cause pollution to any stream or well or sewer or land. No person shall establish or operate any industries without prior consent of the State Pollution Control Board under the Section 25 of the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. Prohibition on use of a stream or well for disposal of polluting matter is clearly mentioned in detail under the Section 24 of this Act. The Act provides for maintenance and restoration of quality of all types of surface and groundwater. The Act also makes provisions for the various penalties for the defaulters. So this is the salient features brief of this the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. The Third act we can see here, the Forest Conservation Act 1980. What are the salient features of this act? This act restricts diversion of forest land for non-forest purpose like mining or construction without prior government approval. We can see here reserve forests are open to the public, whereas protected forests are not. In reserve forest, activities like lumbering, grazing, and hunting are allowed, whereas in protected forests, all these activities are completely banned. Any illegal non-forestry activity within a forest area can be immediately stopped as per this act or under this act. What do you mean by the non-forest purpose or non-forest activity? That means breaking off or clearing of any forest land or portion thereof for any purpose other than reforestation. So this act, some amendment has been made under the Forest Conservation Act 1980. This amendment was made in 1992, and some new things have been added during the amendment. You can see here in 1992, some amendment was made in the act which made provision for allowing some non-forest activities in forest without cutting trees. Non-forest works are allowed, but without cutting trees or limited cutting without prior approval of the central government. So what are these activities? The setting of transmission lines, seismic surveys, explorations, drilling, and hydroelectric projects. The last activities involves large-scale destruction of forest for which prior approval of the center is necessary in case of hydroelectric project establishment or construction. So what are the other amendments which were made in the year 1992 under the Forest Conservation Act 1980? So let us see the next amendment. Wildlife sanctuaries, national forests, etc. are totally prohibited for any exploration or survey under this act without prior approval of central government, even if no tree felling is involved. So cultivation of tea, coffee, spices, rubber and plants which are cash crops are included under non-forest activity and not allowed in the reserve forest, right? Though it is given under the non-forestry activity, but not allowed in case of reserve forest. Even cultivation of fruit-bearing trees while yielding plants or plants of medicinal value in forest area need to be first approved by the central government. This is because newly introduced species, whatever the new species you are going to plant in the forest area may cause an imbalance in the ecology of the existing forest. Tussar cultivation, which is a type of silk yielding insect in forest areas by tribals as a means of their livelihood, is treated as a forestry activity. So government has given the permission. This comes under the forestry activity. Silk yielding insect that means tussar cultivations. Mining is a non-forestry activities and prior approval of central government is mandatory. Removal of stones, bajri, boulder, etc. from river beds located within the forest are fall under the non-forestry activity. So the next act we can see, these are also legal provisions. The act, the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. What are the various provisions? The salient features we can see here. The act provides for prevention, control, and abatement of air pollutions. Pollution control boards, which may be central pollution control board or state pollution control board, have the regulatory authority to implement this act. Their Act 1981. Just parallel to the functions related to the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, which we have discussed earlier, the boards perform similar functions related to improvement of air qualities. So person carrying on industry, etc., not to allow emission of air pollutants in excess of the standards laid down by the State Pollution Control Board under the Section 22 if you are going to read the section 22 of this act, you will get the complete details about these paragraphs. Based upon analysis report, either the consent is granted or refused to the industry under the section 21 of the act. So under section 21, the industry has to obtain the consent, but this consent may be granted or rejected depending upon the report submitted by the industry. The, the Act makes provision for the various penalties for the defaulters, which are not going to follow the instructions or the conditions given in the consent, or we can say the consent order or the consent, whatever the consent conditions have been given. If the industries are not going to follow, in that case, the penalties can be uh, given by the State Pollution Control Board. The Act has provision for ensuring emission standard from automobiles under this section 20. As per the section 19, in consultation with the State Pollution Control Board, the state government may declare an area within the state which is called as air pollution control area. No person shall, without prior consent of the State Pollution Control Board, operate or establish any industrial unit in the air pollution control area. So next act, we can say that is the Environmental Protection Act 1986. In fact, this act is called an umbrella act for the environmental protection in India, because many rules have been framed under this act that we shall see on the next slide. So the act has given powers to the central government to take measures to protect and improve environment, while the state government coordinate the actions. So coordination in between the central and state governments are aligned, or coordinations based on the coordinations, the power can be implemented, the action can be taken. The most important function of the central government under this act include setting of the standard of quality of air quality standard, water quality standard, or soil for various areas and purposes. The maximum permissible limits of concentration of various environmental pollutants, including noise for different areas, the procedures and safeguard for the handling of hazardous substances. So different rules have been framed under this Act 1986. Different rules have been framed by the Government of India. The prohibition and restriction on the handling of hazardous substances in different area. The prohibition and restriction on the location of industries and to carry on process and operations in different area. The procedures and safeguards for prevention of accidents which may cause environmental pollution, and providing for remedial measures for such accidents. So these are the some of the important functions of the central government under this act, which include the setting of these parameters, maximum permissible limit, standards for air, water, soil, procedure and safeguards for hazardous waste, prohibition and restriction on the handling of hazardous substances, prohibition and restriction on the location of industries, procedures and safeguards for the prevention of accidents. So all these things comes under the Environmental Protection Act 1986. So as I told you that the Environmental Protection Act 96, it is called a umbrella act. So under this act, different rules have been framed. For example, the Environmental Protection Rules 1986. Under this rules, environmental impact assessment is conducted for a new industry, and environmental audit report is also prepared. All standards have been framed, like caustic soda industry, oil refinery, sugar industry, thermal power plants, cement plant, leather industries, fertilizer industries under these rules, that is the Environmental Protection Rules 1986. So the manufacture, storage and import of hazardous chemicals has also been framed under this Act 1986, Environmental Protection 1986. So these rules in 1989 has been framed. The rules for manufacture, use, import, export, and storage of hazardous microorganisms, genetically engineered organisms, or cells 1989. Chemical accidents, emergency planning, preparedness, and response rules 1996. the Biomedical Waste Management Handy Rules 1998, the Plastic Manufacture, Sale and Uses Rules 1999, the Noise Pollution Regulation and Control Rules 2000, the Ozone Depletion Substances Regulation and Control Rules 2000, the Municipal Solid Waste Management and Handy Rules 2000, Battery Management and Handy Rules 2001, and the Hazardous Waste Management and Handy and Transboundary Movement Rules 2000. So all these rules have been framed under the Environmental Protection Act 1986 for the control of environmental pollution, or we can say to protect the environment. But lastly, what we can conclude, the environmental protection is not only a legal necessity, but also a moral and social responsibility uh, by the people. A strict implementation of environmental laws, public participation, and awareness are essential for ensuring a clean and healthy environment for present and future generations. So, so all the legal aspects for the environmental protections we discussed in this topic. What are the various acts, rules have been framed by the government of India, and how the state and central pollution control boards have been doing work for the protection of environment. Thank you.